Hi, and welcome to Discovering DataFlex. Last week, we created an entire application, more or less, with a complete set of views for managing data in the different tables. But sometimes the customers want to see data more like an Excel spreadsheet where you have a list of different items. So that's what we're going to look into today and how to do that kind of list. And in order to do that kind of list, we need to create a new view. And since we're not using a wizard, we just create a regular web view. And this should be perhaps item overview. And since it's an object, we're going to name it O. And there you go. Now you can see down here what the application looks like. You can actually bring that out so we can see it entirely here. And we don't want these fields here, so we're going to make some changes. Let's put that back again. There. So we're going to remove this form, and we're going to add a grid list or web grid. So we can take a web grid and put in here, and now you see we have a grid. No columns yet, but we're going to add that as well. We need to add some data dictionaries. So the data dictionary structure go here. And since we want to have a list of items, we're going to create a item data dictionary. So first of all, we want to use the C item data dictionary, and we're going to create an object who item underscore dd, for instance, is a C item data dictionary and object. Now what we can do is we can actually take this column and make it an entry item and say that this should be item dot name, and we can add another column and say that this should be item dot category, and you can't have two objects with the same name, so we call this O column category, and this one we could call O column name. And let's call this the item and this the category. So we're just filling in these different labels that's already here. And since we're not going to edit this, we can actually go with a list, but there are a few differences. You can read about them. If you press F1, you can see the web grid, and it's a multi-row, multi-column grid control where you can do things like this. So here's a sample of how that might look like. And if we go to see web list, this is also a multi-row, multi-column grid control, but you have less control over it. So in order to use this, we also need to set the main data dictionary, and it should be the O item data dictionary, and we want to set the server that's going to serve us data in this case, and it's also going to be the item DD. So let's just have a look and see what this does for us. Okay, we have an invalid syntax, missing 2 keyword. Ah, yeah, sorry. Let's see if that's better. Yeah, that's it. We got the item overview, and here we have the list. We can get the items here. We can actually search for items using this one. But we want to add our own search feature. But one thing you noticed here, and if I log out and log in again and get to the overview, you see the page is empty. And it's not filled until we actually start populating it with some data. So we need to get something to trigger this list to find the data, basically. So we're going to go into the C web grid and look at the documentation. And here we have a procedure onload, which is on the view actually. That sends find the first record of the data dictionary. That means that it starts populating the data dictionary, and that will then trigger the web grid to start working. Let's copy this code. And we put this in the list. And we're going to change this to our item data dictionary. And now as we run this, the list is here. We also want to make sure that when we load the page or start the application, we want to pick this as the starting page. So we're just going to see how to do that before we move on. In order to make this the starting page of the application, we want to go into the app source and scroll down and add a function here called the get default view. And that is a function that is called in the system to get the start page, basically. And here we add the hview, and then we just move our item overview to hview. And that should be all we need to do in order to set this page as the default view. So let's start and see what happens. When the application loads, we get directly into the list page exactly as we wanted. And in the list view, we might also want to skip this toolbar up here. If we do that, we're going to have to inject the toolbar on all the pages where we want it. So you could do that as well, but I think we're going to wait with that for a later session. Let's see. Now we go back to the item overview, and we might want to add some more columns here. For instance, I would like to have a form with the expiration dates. let's call that expiration, and let's have one with the location, expiration date, exp date, and the location. And now we cannot just pick the item location ID, because then we just get a number. We want the name of the location. So we actually want to add another table we can reference in this view. And in order to do that, we need to use, say, location data dictionary, and we need to add the object location dd is a C location data dictionary, and in here we need to set DDO server to location dd. And what this means is that now the location is serving labels to the item ID based on the relationship between those in the database. And now we can actually write location dot name and see how that works. Yeah, here you go. And now we got a list with all of these. We might want to make a search form so we can search for these different things. And often when you search for date, you search from and to. So we can add a small search form on the top here that we can use to find things. Let's start with a web form, simple web form. There you go. And let's call this search item. And let's add a few more objects. And we want the first one item, and we want the category, we want the location, from and to, and then we want to add a search button as well. So let's say query location from and to, and I have button. So we're just going to say web button search. Now we got all of these on top of each other here, so we want to move them so they are using a little bit less space. But maybe we want to make them use even less space, and we want them to go like besides each other like this. Oh, I have the button as well. This is actually quite crowded. So what we can do is we can click on this, go into properties and pick the label position and say we want it to be top. And as you can see, we have this code here So we can just copy this and put that in the rest of the forms as well. It'll save us some time. And now we can actually make it even smaller if we like. See how small we need to go. Perhaps move this over there, and the location, and then just make the category a bit wider. The set button doesn't have to be that big either. Just move it over there. Yeah. Now we're starting to get somewhere. And now we want something to happen. If I fill something out in the information here, I want something to happen when I click the search button. And I cannot just say send find first of item. I need to make the DataDictionary constrain on something. So what we can do now is we can create procedure on constraint. And here we can actually add some constraints. So we're going to start with the item. And why not have a look at how you do that in the on constraint. And here you can read a lot about how you can do constraints. So in procedure on constraint, for instance, we could copy this. And in this case, we want the item dot name to be equal to is name, and then we might want to, or we need to get the value from somewhere. So we do a web get, since this is a data entry item, we're going to try to web get the PS value of stream search item to is name. And then we're going to constrain on that. So if all goes well, we should be able to write something in the item search field, click search. Oh no. We also need to send rebuild constraints to the who item dd. I suppose that's how you write it. Send rebuild constraint off. Yeah, off. And let's run this just to verify that it works. But now we didn't get the page loaded. So what happened there? Because we have now we have a constraint here that actually removes the data. So we want to make sure that we only do this constraint if the value of S name is not blank. Because otherwise we are kind of stuck with anything we type there. And now we got our values back. And if I write paint and click search, we have rebuilt this. We can set a breakpoint. I click here. We end up at the breakpoint. The name is paint, so that works. And what do we need more? Send find DD record in buffer of O web grid 1. This tells the O web grid to look in the data dictionary for the data. So let's recompile and see if that works. Yeah, there you go. And if we remove it and search again, we get all back. Now I might look at something like shirt. I get nothing because I'm actually looking for equal. So what we can do here is we can write greater or equal, and that will actually help with our shirt. So if we search and we get search for P, we get paint and shirt. If we search for A, we basically get the entire list. But that's the way DataFlex works as a record-based. It finds the first one and continues, which you can do some stuff to work around, but we're not going to bother with that right now because we're actually going to use SQL later on, and that is much nicer to do these kind of queries with SQL. So I'm just showing how to do it in DataFlex first and what you can do. Now we would like to add the rest of them. So we're going to add the category. And the category, we actually want a selection. So we would like to be able to pick. So we need to change that. That should be a or a web combo. But we need to also tell it where to find the data for that combo. But I'm not sure how to get the values out of the value selection list here. You might be able to help me with that. There might be someone who has a solution. But what I'm thinking of doing here is actually to look which values has been added into the category field. And I'm just going to pick the index item column indexes 3. So we want index 3. And let's see if that does what we want it to do. We got 2 of these, and so that's basically taking the values we have. So we only want 1 of each here. Could we say that these are sorted? Yeah, they are sorted. So what we could do is add a string scat and remove flag 2 scat. Let's say if scat not equals to the item category. Then we move it over there, and then we want to just update this cat move item dot category to scat, and that way we should only get one of each. So let's see how that works. Now you can search for all the values that has been added in this column, but not all the other categories. You cannot see all categories, but that doesn't make any difference really, because now if we search for food, we should get food. But then we also need to add it up here. So in the data dictionary, in the constraint, is category, and we want to do the same as this, is category, and we want to get the value of category, and we can just add a constraint here. If is category not empty, begin and constraint item category, and this time we want equals, because we know we can only pick the entire string. We cannot type half of it as category. So there we go with that. And would we do something else with this? Yeah, you can see we cannot unselect this, so we need to add an empty line up here. And we could do that either by just starting out with sending something like this. So then there is an empty line, or we could say select, or you could use the built-in. Look at the combo help. You can see that there is a default value, add empty. So we can try to use this one first. Set add empty to true. Let's see what that does. No, it doesn't do anything. Okay. So we remove that and we add our own, because I know that works. So now we have the select. If I search, I get everything. Clothes. I get clothes. Select, I get everything again. That works because this is the one that it actually does the lookup on. And this is the value that is presented in the interface. So that's what you see the select here. Now for the location, we actually want to add a lookup. So we want to add the this model dialog with the location web lookup. So we're going to start out in here, use location web lookup. So now we have that included. And then we go down here and we want to set the PB prompt button to true. and you can see we got this lookup button here, and we want to set the prompt to the location. Yeah, and we need a handle, so we need some kind of handle here, and we need to add that. So let's create a handle, and location lookup, and then we want to move location web lookup to HO lookup. So the O location web lookup is actually, if I go in here, it's this one. So we pick this object and move into this handler. And now we can go down to our selection box here and just say that this is the lookup we want to use. And if we run this, I should be able to find the locations here. Okay. Cannot be used as a relational lookup. Okay. We have to publish this procedure. So prompt update callback. And we web set the PS prompt update callback of the prompt object that we get a callback from to this prompt update callback. Procedure. So when it calls back, it calls this procedure. And if we don't do this, it will basically call the dictionary and try to relate this to the view or the data dictionary that it's supposed to be related to. So then we get into trouble. So in order to get this to work by itself, we need to add these extra lines of code here. And we can actually delete that. Now again, we go in and add the location to our search form here. And we get the location to S location. And then again, we do the same as with category. If the location is empty. But here we cannot do exactly the same because we cannot constrain on the location, because what we got in here is actually the item location ID. And so we need to add a location ID. That's an integer. And we need to figure out what integer that is. So we send a clear location, move our S location name to location dot name, and then we find EQ location by index 2, because as we remember, name as is set as index 2. So we go in and double check that table. Location index 2. Yeah, we have name here. So that's good. And after this find, we can check if found, just to verify. Then we do the constraint on, and we really don't need the iLocation. We can actually do location.id, and then we can just remove this line because we don't really need it. So let's see if that works. Now we pick a location, and we have two things in the freezer. So we search for the freezer. Nothing happens. So let's see what's going on here. Search. And we can check in location. We have not found anything yet, so go down one step. And here we have location name and location freezer. Okay, so we might have some issue with spaces here. So, we could do greater or equal and then check and. Trim location name equals to trim location name. Let's just put some additional parentheses around this. Let's see how that works then. Yeah. Well, let's try again. Freeze. Now we step down, and the location, it's found something. Number 1, freezer. So found is true, location is freezer, and location name is freezer. So we step down, and then we constrain location ID equals location.id, which is 1. This is actually converted to a string when you look it up as a table. So if we do integer on this one and try to run it again, and pick freezer, for instance, it will actually get the freezer. We pick the basement. Oh, we don't have anything in the basement. Garage. Yes. Wardrobe 1. So there you have it. So now we can search on this one, and we can just delete it if we want to see all of them. Now for the final ones, which are the dates. Let's see how that goes. We want to add those is from and is to. Search from to is to and is from. If is from again and then we just say constrain item dot date expiration date. This should be greater than is from, and it might be that we're gonna convert that to a date. Yeah. And then let's do the same for 2. this? Oh, I actually want to get equal as well, so greater or equal. And this one should be less or equal. Now what we have from 2021 03. I want to have a date picker here. So let's add a date picker to the form. That should be a, no, here we are. From web date form and web date form. Now we can pick a date. So if we want the first one, so we have 25. So if we pick 25, this one should get out. And if we pick anything here above 31, we should remove these two. So let's see if that fits. Yeah. So it seems to be working. Perfect. So now we have a filter where we can search, and we can search for something in here. We can remove this and see if we got, yes, we got some clothes after the 25th of March. And we can pick something in the freezer after. So it works perfect. I'll put these, select all. There you go. And we go into our repository. Now we have some more dev tables. Okay, we just commit that as a separate commit. Then we want to commit the, let's see, this one first, stage, and we want to commit basically all of this, but let's commit, let's do some smart stuff here so we can actually go back and stage that. And then I want to stage this. And I want to send the end of the object. So here we have something at least. Just stage one extra line there. So this is our overview that we add to the project. And then what did we do? We added the grid. And we actually, oh, we want this one as well. Stage. Stage. And we actually want that in this one, so we can just amend it. And now we have this commit here. So as you can see, this is what we added. What we did then was we added this grid with some views or some columns. And in order to show that grid, we had to incorporate the data dictionary. Stage this and this one, and we actually added this as well because we wanted the location, and then we added these, and we added this as well because we wanted to initiate the list, because we wanted to initialize the list. So this is the first step where we created the list that showed in the view. So create a list with data. And here, oh, that one should have been earlier. So what this get default view did was putting the overview first. So let's add that. And then we added these search form features, and we added the constraint to the data dictionary, and we added the button and the lookup. So that was the rest of it. Add search features to our overview list. There you go. So that's it for this video, and you can see there were some limitations when using the DataFlex default database, but next time we're going to do a similar view, or basically the same view, but we are going to switch to an SQL database. So we're both going to switch to SQL, and we're going to update the search filter so that it uses SQL queries instead of the DataFlex constraints. See you next week. Bye for now.